All right, let's jump right into it. The talk of the town, the talk of the world. Bitcoin hits new all-time high in Canada and everywhere else in the world, probably.
Not everywhere, not in the U.S.
But in the U.S.?
But several countries around the world.
69 was the top.
69 in the U.S., so we're at 62 right now. But we'll probably hit all-time highs in the next 2 to 3 weeks would be my guess.
Nice.
So yeah, it's exciting. I mean, it's not really getting as much publicity as you would think. It's still not, the retail market, the people like you and me who might be buying are still not really heavily buying. They're not even, a lot of the people aren't even searching about Bitcoin yet. Usually when the price starts to go high like it did, you start to see a lot of retail investment interest come in. They were like, oh, they don't want to miss that boat, right? The FOMO. But yeah, the FOMO.
Well, Google Trends, let's look at it. That should be number one, or at least top 10. And you're right about that. It's not. Guess what's number one? Domino's Pizza in Canada.
Yeah.
Most searched.
Yeah. So,
oh God.
So Bitcoin, yeah, the searches.
You're right. People.
They're not even looking it up at this point, and it's actually near an all-time low in terms of general public interest.
Weird.
It's very odd, and I think it's just caught people by surprise and happened really quickly. Nobody really got a chance to. And people don't like to buy assets when they're cheap. I mean, that's just
right.
Human psychology. They like to wait until prices get really high, and then the FOMO kicks in. All their friends start making money, and they're like, okay, I better not miss this boat. And then they rush in, and that's when the institutional investors sell off to those retail, and then they get crushed.
Right.
So usually they enter the market way too late, and that's probably going to happen again this year. You'll probably see them start to buy maybe in the 100,000 to 150,000 range.
Could we see that soon with Bitcoin?
I think before the end of the year. I think it's a very, very high probability that Bitcoin will be between 100 and 150,000. I mean,
wow.
Upside potential maybe early next year. You might even get up to.
So you're talking U.S.
U.S.
Yeah.
U.S. So I mean,
because Canadian right now, Bitcoin is at 82,000.
82,000. So I think Canadian, you'll probably get above 200,000 Canadian. You could even you can even get to 300,000 Canadian in the next 12 months. That wouldn't surprise me at all. And the main driver for that is the institutional investments coming into the market are insane. They're buying $400 million to $600 million a day, where that didn't exist before. So this is all new money coming into Bitcoin that never happened before. They're buying around 10,000 Bitcoin a day. And the supply right now, the newly mined Bitcoin, they're only making 900 Bitcoin a day. So you're short about 9,100 Bitcoin. Where is this Bitcoin going to come from? And that's why you're seeing the price go up. It's,
okay, well, that makes a lot of sense. Supply and demand, right?
It's simple math, simple supply and demand. And the scary part is, not scary, the exciting part, and if you're investing in cryptos and in April, is the halving. So Bitcoin gets mined into circulation by humans. They use computers to bring Bitcoin into existence.
Okay.
And you mine 900 Bitcoin per day. So right now there's about 19.5 million Bitcoin in circulation. That's going to go up to 21 million at the top, and that will be it. So there's only going to be 21 million Bitcoin that will ever be produced. So over the next 100 plus years, that supply will continue to go down by a half. So right now it's 900 Bitcoin a day. It's going to go down to 450. Then it's going to go down to 225 every 4 years. So what happens historically after the halving, the next 12 to 18 months is absolutely parabolic for crypto. Bitcoin just moons, and all of the cryptocurrencies perform really, really well in that 12 to 18 month period. That's the bull market for crypto after the halving. So that hasn't even happened yet. So we saw a big move prior to the halving, which has never happened before. And the main reason for that is the institutional money coming in.
So you're talking about the Blackrock Bitcoin ETF.
The Bitcoin ETFs, I believe there's 11 of them.
Yeah.
So that is just huge, because that's the big money. The big money is in institutions, not in the retail market. So Bitcoin has been going up over the last several years because of just retail people like you and me buying Bitcoin. But now you got the big hedge funds. You got the big Blackrock, all these major, you're talking
why
about
did they get in? Why did they get in the big Bitcoin game?
Why did they?
Why did they?
Well, it's a no-brainer. I mean, it's
denying it. Weren't they denying it for years?
Well, of course, because the reason they denied it is because not so much denied it or talked poorly about it, is because they weren't able to make money off. Right. So why would they talk highly about an asset class they couldn't make money on?
So now with the ETF,
they can make money on some crypto. So I've been hearing from financial advisors across Windsor, for example, and I've asked them, I said, are you guys are you able to sell Bitcoin now? And they're like, ETF, obviously not
Right.
real Bitcoin.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
So and they're like, yeah, and they're starting to push it. So,
Oh, that's, yeah, well,
and again, they're also going to be greedy as the price continues to go up and they realize they can make more money by selling cryptocurrency ETFs versus traditional stocks and bonds. They're going to move into that. I mean,
Right.
greed is a big factor as to why prices go astronomically high like they have in the past, because the retail market rushes in. You're going to see that on the institutional side this time. That's where it's going to get crazy.
Right.
You're going to have, hedge funds with hundreds of billions of dollars. I mean, there's over $100 trillion in investable assets from these institutional investors. Bitcoin is only $1 trillion asset. So you're talking about, if they bring in 5% of their overall investments into Bitcoin,
Right. Their portfolio. Yeah.
the price of Bitcoin is going to absolutely skyrocket.
So sky's the limit for Bitcoin.
It is. I mean,
Yeah.
I think in this cycle, you're going to see somewhere between $150,000 and $300,000 Bitcoin in this next 12 months. It could even happen in 2024, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
You could even see 100,000 Bitcoin by this May, June. It's moving fast and big money's coming in, and it's not going to slow down because there's still a lot of institutional investors that cannot invest in Bitcoin. So they're still waiting for certain regulatory approvals in their little funds. They got to do paperwork, all that stuff. So they're not there yet. So only 50% of the institutional money can actually invest in it. So eventually, once everybody's in, which they should be by, I would say, May or June, they'll all be able to buy it. And by then, I think the price will just continue to increase.
So this is a good thing. When I seen all the headlines with Blackrock, I was like, you know what I mean? I didn't like it, but now I actually do. Because Blackrock, what people don't understand, Blackrock, State Street, Vanguard, they're the largest shareholders of 88% of the S&P 500 companies. So you have 500 companies, 88% of those companies, their largest shareholders are BlackRock, State Street, or Vanguard. So I thought that Bitcoin and BlackRock really don't go together, because you got like BlackRock's the evil empire and Bitcoin is the rebel resistance. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So now it's kind of like maybe BlackRock gave in. And so, you know what I mean? That's
they're
what it seems
of
like.
making money. And
Yeah,
they're going to make a lot of money by selling Bitcoin.
Right.
I mean, there's huge demand, right? I mean, people like me and you have been asking their financial advisors, how do I buy Bitcoin? And they've never been able to offer that product. So now that it's available, I mean, the sky's the limit for Bitcoin. And I think to me, it's one of the best investment opportunities out there right now, including, other than precious metals, of course, but I think crypto has that bigger upside opportunity in the short term. I think that's where, because Bitcoin, it has shorter cycles, so you could eventually, if it does go to 200,000, it will then drop to like 50,000. So you're going to see it's more volatile, more risky.
Right.
But if you're able to time the market well, I mean, there's a lot of money to be made in crypto.
Right. So you can make money off the dips, right?
For sure.
Yeah. Well, you're talking about institutions, but Edward Snowden just came out and he was talking about government. So prediction, this was one of his tweets. A national government will be revealed this year to have been buying Bitcoin, the modern replacement of monetary gold, without having disclosed that fact publicly.
Yeah, I mean, it's already started. There are countries that are publicly buying Bitcoin, such as El Salvador, other countries in South America. So that's going to be a trend that's going to continue for sure. I mean, central banks around the world have been historically buy gold, right? Governments around the world historically buy gold. They haven't started buying Bitcoin yet. So that's another bullish opportunity for cryptocurrencies. Once the big governments and central banks come in and start buying Bitcoin, I mean, the sky really is the limit.
Never mind 100, 150K, could be $1 million.
I mean, it will eventually get there. It will. Yeah. Bitcoin will be into the multiple millions at some point, right? I mean, whether it takes 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, nobody really knows. But at some point, just because of the money printing and how small of the portion that cryptocurrencies currently have of all of the total assets in the world, if you look at all total assets in the world, you're talking about hundreds of trillions of dollars. There's only $1 billion in Bitcoin. Mm-hmm. Even gold is like $18 trillion. So a lot of people think Bitcoin will surpass gold in terms of market cap. So that would mean Bitcoin would have to outperform gold by 17, 18 times. Can that happen? For sure. I mean, again, the institutional money only has less than 1% of the total Bitcoin supply right now. Like you said, they own 88% of stock.
Yeah.
Less than 1% of crypto. Eventually, they're going to move up. It's going to go to 5%, 10%, 50%.
Right.
Because they want to buy it all as well, right? Because then they can control the markets. It's one of the big reasons they own most of the stuff.
Okay, so
That's why they approve the ETFs. Eventually, they're going to be able to manipulate the markets like they do gold and silver and completely control it.
Yeah.
But in the end, they need to own a large amount of it before they could control it. Right now, they're just starting out. So it's going to take a while before they actually control them and they're able to manipulate it to the downside. So I think this next 12 months brings a really exciting opportunity for Bitcoin.
And they were calling it 2024 was the year for Bitcoin.
Yeah,
like the beginning of...
The only thing they didn't call is they didn't think it would happen this fast.
Yeah.
Historically, the big moves don't happen until after the halving in April.
Yeah.
And this move happened in February, January, February. So it surprised a lot of people, caught a lot of people off guard. So now people are increasing their predictions in terms of how high Bitcoin can go in this cycle. I mean, people were saying 100 to 150. Now people are saying 200 to 300 potentially.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Now, enough about Bitcoin. What other cryptos should we look out for? You know what I mean? Everybody's talking about Bitcoin, but is there any dark horses coming up that maybe you know?
There's a lot. I mean, it's tough to really navigate. There's so many. I would stick, if I'm a new and I'm getting into this market for the first time, I would really stick to the big ones.
Yeah.
Your Bitcoins, your Ethereums,
right? Potentially
XRP. I'm not a huge fan, but
yeah.
A lot of these alternative coins are still down 80 to 90% from their all-time highs of 2021. So that where Bitcoin's only like 10% away. So it's a big, Bitcoin performed way better than all these alternative coins. So if you bought these alternative coins instead of Bitcoin, it would have been a huge mistake. Now, is there going to be more upside for the alternative coins for the rest of 2024? I believe so. I think there's huge opportunities. I think Ethereum, for example, you could probably see that go up 400, 500%. Some of these other alternative coins can go up 10 times, 20 times, even 100 times. Some of these AI coins, for example, AGIX, Fetch, AI is going to be huge in 2024. And I think crypto is the AI coins in the crypto world will also do amazing. I personally own, 70 or 80 different cryptocurrencies because I don't know which ones are going to really do well. I own Bitcoin as well, obviously.
And you could get in the other ones, right? It's a small value to get in, right? Not like an 83,000 Bitcoin, but you could get in these ones are like
it depends.
Yeah,
but some are a penny, some are less than a penny. Like Shiba Inu is like 0.000. So,
yeah, exactly.
I mean, so people think they can get rich off of those coins because they're so cheap, but in reality, they're not that cheap. They just have a way more supply.
Yeah,
they might have 10 billion coins. So that's the only reason it is as cheap as it is. So you really got to look at market cap when you're investing in cryptos. What's the total valuation of that crypto? Bitcoin's just over $1 trillion, for example. So like a Shiba Inu, they might be valued at a few $100 million at this point, or even over $1 billion. I'm not sure exactly what their valuation is, but there's not a lot of, there's a lot more upside in the alternative coins, in my opinion. They're just more difficult to choose because some of them will go to zero. Most of them in the end will go to zero. Bitcoin's really, to me, is the only guarantee out there, long-term wise. So that's your safest bet. So, I mean, I wouldn't spend too much time trying to find the diamond in the rough. Stick to the big guys. You're going to make money. But there will be some coins that do absolutely amazing.
Yeah, for sure. Let's jump into now. Let's not forget about gold. So we were looking at gold, the reserves by each country, and obviously the U.S. owns the most gold, but coming behind them,
supposedly.
Yeah, supposedly. And why do you say that? You just
the Fed has never been audited. I mean,
okay, that's a great point.
Why would it not be audited? If it was there, why wouldn't they allow an audit? I mean, it's pretty suspicious. The rest of the world doesn't truly believe they have all that gold.
Are all countries audited? Like,
I don't believe so.
No,
but again, that's because they're all owned by central banks, and central banks have their own rules. So it's really difficult to force an audit on the central banks unless the government forces the issue, and yet to date, it's never happened.
Yeah, so the U.S. is number one by a
lot.
Lot.
Yeah.
I think they own I think it's by, what is it, by tons, the T?
Yeah,
Yeah.
8,200.
Yeah, that's about close, Mike. 8133 tons, the U.S. And where's Canada in this? Let's see. I don't think they're even in the top.
Canada's low. They don't have any.
Yeah, they're not even mentioned here.
So Canada sold all of their gold reserves a few years back.
Oh, God. Why would they do that?
It makes zero sense. I mean, the rest of the world is buying record amounts
Yes.
of gold.
Yeah.
Last year on record, the most amount of gold the central banks have ever bought. And Canada's doing the absolute opposite. They're selling their gold. They're exporting all the gold that they mine. They're not keeping anything. It makes zero sense. I mean, from an economic standpoint, from an investment standpoint, to not own any gold, I mean, it's almost...
Just give me more reason to hate Trudeau.
it's so...
Here, let's add this to the...
The reality is, if I was the prime minister, I wouldn't... Not only would I be a big buyer of gold, but I would not be exporting any of our gold that we mined from Canada.
Yeah.
I would keep it illegal. Keep
it here.
Canada. The government should be buying it, and we should be importing. So China, for example, they're the biggest producer of gold. They're also the biggest importer of gold in the world. So they're importing more gold than anybody else in the world, and they don't export any of it. They keep it all.
So, yeah, China's buying at a record pace.
Record pace. And
that's
they
interesting.
have over 2,000 tons.
Yeah.
But I don't believe that at all. I think they have way more.
Yeah, just over 2,000. You're right.
China is obviously known to not tell the truth about numbers such as that. So
can we trust China? Yeah.
You can. I mean, my
you
guess
think
is,
they're higher?
I think they're way higher. I think the U.S. is way lower. And again, if China wants to be the global currency of the world, they're going to need to have a significant position in gold. They're not there yet, but they're trying to get there. And my guess is they have a big hidden supply somewhere. And at some point, they're going to say, hey, we got 10,000 tons of gold, not 2,000.
Yeah. Shout out to Italy, number 3.
Yeah.
I'm surprised.
I know. That'll be their saving grace. Unfortunately, it's a bankrupt country as well.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, they will have gold, but they'll probably have to give it up at some point.
Yeah,
too.
and Russia's up there too.
And they're buying record amounts as well. I mean,
it's a pretty...
the central banks know what's going on. They don't want bonds. I mean, they don't want to buy the U.S. dollar. There's just way too much risk there. Gold is a guarantee. Gold's going to go up in price as inflation continues to rise. So that trend's not going to stop.
So about that, with the BRICS, there's this expert believe right about March 11th. This now I watched this video on Redacted with Natalie and Clayton Morris, really good podcast. We follow. They're talking about how China at a record pace was buying gold, and it's all interrelated. Now Saudi Arabia and the BRICS, they're dumping billions of U.S. treasuries. You know, the dollar's about to go insane when the yield curve starts rising again. Experts believe right about at this March 11th, this is a significant date, reverse repo market run and bank term funds program ends. They'll have no choice but maybe to raise rates to save off a crisis. Small banks that are holding all these commercial real estate loans could collapse. You know, rates go up. China dumps more treasuries. The Fed prints more money. Who's making out? The 1% making billions, and we're getting screwed. You want to add more on that? Like,
yeah, I mean, all that's telling you is the U.S. dollar is dead. I mean, its best days are behind them, obviously. As these countries continue to sell U.S. treasuries, the U.S. dollar will continue to go down in value.
Right.
So the only way to fight back against that is to raise interest rates. Problem is, they want to lower interest rates. They've been very vocal about lowering rates 3 times this year in the U.S. I mean, will they be able to pull it off? I don't know. They'll probably try. Since it is an election year, they want to create an illusion
That's a
that
good
everything's
point.
okay. Stock market stays high. Real estate stays high. So they probably will try to lower interest rates. The problem is the CPI came out in the U.S. and inflation's going up again. So they raised rates all of these times. Now they paused for a few months and inflation starts skyrocketing again. So how are they planning? How do they expect to pull off 3 interest rate reductions? If inflation is increasing, you have to raise rates to save the dollar.
Okay.
Or else inflation will continue to run away. Instead, they want to lower rates. So all they're going to do is cause more inflation. So eventually what they're going to have to do is reverse on that. So whatever they do is going to be a short-term solution. It won't be a solution. It'll just be a short-term, just to stimulate the asset prices, increase the real estate prices, increase stocks, bonds.
Right.
but eventually they're going to have to raise rates. And when that happens, that's when the risk on these banks, especially regional banks, is going to really, it could even happen in March, to be honest with you, before any rate changes. With that repo market funding ending, that banks are broke. They just don't have liquidity. And that's what we could see happen, a liquidity crisis, and more regional banks fail. I think that is very likely to happen in 2024. Obviously, the other thing that's going to have to happen is the central banks, the Federal Reserve of the U.S. is going to have to print trillions of dollars to bail out these banks again and to give them more liquidity. It's the only way to keep the system going. And people know that. That's why the dollar is, again, I think their best days are behind, and that's why I'm such a big perma bull on precious metals and commodities in general.
And you could see it now, like spot gold will finish February just above 2,000. This is like the fourth consecutive 2,000 plus month we've seen.
That's super bullish because that's never happened before.
Yeah.
And so what that is doing, it's creating a base. So the longer you can stay at a certain range, it's very bullish from a technical standpoint. So the longer that base goes, so if it stays above there for another 2, 3, 4 months, now that it will probably never go down below 2,000 US again. Okay, so now you got a board that you can bounce off.
Right, it's going to be a launch pad.
A launch pad, exactly. That's what it is. And you're going to see gold going to all-time highs very soon, probably in the next few weeks. And then once it stays above there for a few weeks, again, precious metals will do amazing once gold gets to all-time highs and stays there. And uncertainty in the world continues. Inflation keeps going up. Rates coming down, super bullish for precious metals. Basically, it's very bearish for the U.S. dollar, but it's super bullish for precious metals. So, everything is in place for precious metals to have their best year in a long, long time. So cryptos, precious metals, commodities in general, I think you'll see continue to go to the upside in 2024. And, you might get, I think gold will probably be above 2,500 by the end of the year. You could get silver to $35 to $40. And then after that, next year will be even more bullish than that.
So on that, is like history repeating itself? What decade in the past do you compare it to what's going on today? Like history always repeats itself. So what decade do you think is?
I think the 1970s is where I would compare it most to. Now we did see stagflation in the 1970s where inflation was skyrocketing, but the economy was slowing. So that is the definition of stagflation, right?
Right.
Not everything is going up in price. Stocks did not perform well in that decade. They didn't even go above 100% in that decade. Even real estate didn't perform that great. It did okay. But the best performing asset in that decade was gold and silver by far. Silver went up 41 times in that decade and gold went up 25 times. Okay, because that is the environment that gold and silver perform best in. Uncertainty in the world, inflation skyrocketing, economy slowing. People want a safe haven asset in that environment. And that's always been gold and silver historically. And I think this decade is going to line up the exact same way. You're going to see inflation continue to go higher. You're going to see the economy continue to struggle. You're going to see people looking for alternative investment assets to invest in. And gold and silver, in my opinion, are going to be the choice, because that historically has always been the choice. People are going to be nervous about their stock portfolio. They're going to be nervous about investing in real estate. They're going to be nervous about the bond market because that is a very fragile market. They're going to be nervous about sitting in U.S. dollars or Canadian dollars because inflation is going to be going higher and higher and higher. So really the only play at that point is commodities. And the only commodity you can actually own in your possession is gold and silver or platinum or palladium. But gold and silver is historically, because it is money and has been money for 5,000 years, that's what people will flock to first.
Right.
So I'm super, super bullish about this decade for precious metals. I think we're going to see a huge commodity bull market. And I think you'll see silver go up 50 to 100 times. You'll see gold go up 5 to 10 times, where these other asset classes are not going to give you much opportunity. You're not going to be able to double or triple your money in real estate in this decade. I don't see that happening. These $1 million homes are not going to go to $2 to $3 million. Who's going to buy those? People are already broke.
Yeah, they can't afford a home in Canada as it is.
No, and the economy is going to get worse, and inflation is going to go higher. So it's just going to get more difficult for the middle class to afford to buy a house every year from here on out.
Right.
Inflation is not going away. People who think because they raise rates that's going to stop inflation, that's nonsense. That's only slows it down for a short period of time. The inflation is going to just They're going to lower rates. That's inflationary. They're going to print more money for the banks. That's inflationary. I mean, everything that's happening in the world, the war, inflationary. I mean,
and speaking of that, that could be a big contributor to what's going on. Is Putin just threatened a nuclear response to NATO if troops go on Ukraine? So if U.S. puts troops on Ukraine, NATO, I mean, Putin's not messing around. He's already moved nukes.
Yeah, it's
the
not
borders.
the first time this nuclear talk has happened.
Is World War III coming? And if so, how does that play into the economy? And I think this just makes gold, silver, crypto. I think people are going to move away. You're going to see this big shift, even though the stock market is insane right now with the Magnificent Seven.
Real. It's not real. It's
but you're going to see this big shift to commodities.
100%.
Especially if there's a war. That's huge instability. Or World War III, which
I think has already started, to be honest.
Yeah.
I don't think, again, the one thing to realize, anytime there's a end of an empire or end of a financial system, they usually take you to war at the end of that cycle. And that's, to me, this sounds alarm bells that this war that is occurring is likely going to lead to a bigger war. And the main reason, there's a lot of reasons for it. It creates a lot of money, and the banks make a lot of money off wars. I mean, they invest in these companies that make money off of.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I mean, it's a huge moneymaker.
Military complex, right?
Yeah. So again, they usually take you to war before an end of an economic, either a collapse of an empire or a change in financial system, which I think both are happening. I think this is the end of the United States empire. It's also the end of the U.S. dollar. It's also the end of the current monetary system as we know it. We are going to be switching over into an entirely new financial system. Obviously, BRICS has already been vocal about what they're looking to do, backing their currency, new currency, buy commodities. Will that happen? Who knows? But they've been talking about it for a while. Mm-hmm. Eventually, we will be moving to a new currency. That currency will likely be backed by precious metals, maybe not in the United States or Canada, because obviously I think a lot of the Western countries want to move to a central bank digital currency. So they'll probably try that first.
Right.
But there will be a reset of some sort. I mean, they've been talking about the reset for a long time now.
And the perfect crisis, what perfect crisis other than a war?
Well, the other, now World War, I want to touch on that because a lot of people think nuclear, and I'm not of that belief at all. I don't think you're going to see a war go nuclear. I also don't think you're going to see a war where millions and millions of people die. I think, well, they may die, but it won't be because of a bomb.
A bomb, yeah.
It would be, in my opinion, I think this next war will be more of a cyber war, where you get attacked by, let's just say, the U.S. banking system will be shut down, and you won't be able to access your money. You won't be able to go grocery shopping. If you don't have any cash or silver or something on the side, you're not going to be able to buy anything. So I think we're going to be heading more towards that, because if you do a cyber attack and you shut down their financial system for a week or something, I mean, you're going to cause total chaos and economic hardship for that country. Right. So my guess is that would be the biggest threat to the United States and Canada is a cyber attack on our country.
It's already happening. They're blaming China.
Yeah, they're already blaming it. And I mean, again, will it actually be China or Russia doing the cyber attack? Probably not. Yeah, probably a false flag where the U.S. does it upon themselves and then blames it on China or Russia, and they go into just an excuse to make the war bigger, an excuse to go to a central bank digital currency. It's another thing they're looking for. They want to move away from this old system. They want to collapse that old system and usher in a new system. Yeah, the reason they want central bank digital currencies is basically for more control. I mean, at that point, without cash, you're stuck to using their one system. They know exactly what you do with your money, and then they can control what you do with your money. They can limit how much you travel. They can limit how much red meat you buy. They can actually make that currency worthless after 12 months. Where you have to spend it within a certain amount of time. These are all things that are worthless. So these are all things they're likely going to introduce. And in Europe, for example, Christine Lagarde came out and she said that that's likely what they will do. They will implement controls within this currency. And again, all that will do is make us more slaves to the system. So, I mean, you're going to see a lot of pushback when that happens. So the only way I can see them actually implementing it is through a crisis, such as a cyber attack, where they deem our old system as not safe, because it's not on the blockchain, where CBDCs will be on the blockchain. So they will be safer. The downside of it is it will be controlled by these central banks and the governments. And whenever they're controlling your wealth, it's not a good thing. I mean, if they want to make you broke, they can make you broke in a heartbeat. For example, during COVID, if they had central bank digital currencies, they could have just froze every single account very easily with a push of a button.
Yeah, and then adapt that social credit system, right?
Well,
you're not wearing a mask. Oh, guess what? You can't go shopping today.
Right.
Yeah,
You're right. That's coming. The social credit system tied to the central bank.
exactly.
That is the worst world
That is
ever
called
imagined.
endgame.
That is endgame. That's
Yeah,
total
if that
communism.
comes, it's over.
The worst that we've ever seen.
Yeah.
And I don't see it happening long term.
No, I think we'll fight it.
We'll fight it, but I think they might pull it off short term. I don't know.
Mhm.
It might be country by country. Some
Yeah.
countries might accept it. Some might not.
We just need to get people to wake up more
That's
and get people out of the mainstream media and waking up more. And I think it's happening. That's why
started.
I believe a cyber attack is coming, because mainstream media is dead. The ratings are low. People are gravitating to shows like this, the Gold Awakening podcast, Patrick Bet-David, Tucker Carlson. Look at those ratings. These guys are getting millions and millions.
Nobody watches CNN.
Yeah, exactly. Nobody's watching it. So people are starting to wake up. I think their only defense, the evil elites, is to shut it off. They got to shut off the internet.
I think it's
And then,
already started, right?
yeah, exactly. And Whitney Webb talked about this. And then they'll do a cyber attack where the internet's off, and then you'll have like a digital ID to get back on the internet because, oh, it's safe, and they got to make sure this doesn't happen again. And then they're gonna tell you what to watch.
Yeah, you're gonna. Yeah, that's exactly what's gonna happen.
Yeah,
I mean, you're gonna be limited to
it's crazy.
the what's it called? Like shows like this. I mean, you're not gonna be able to find the truth anywhere in the future. So this may be the last months or years where you're gonna be able to actually go find the truth on the internet. I can see them censoring it in a big way in the future, and it's likely going to happen. So, I mean, obviously there will always be decentralized platforms through cryptocurrencies that you'll be able to get some truth. But if you're just using traditional YouTubes, for example, there's no way you're going to be able to. They've already suppressed those videos. It's really hard to find.
No, exactly.
You got to really know who to go look for.
Look what our Prime Minister, unbelievable. Justin Trudeau just said citizens only need 2 media outlets. Like, I can't believe he had the audacity to say that. All information should be from CBC and CTV.
Yeah.
Like, are you kidding me? This guy is like, talk about a dictator.
Yeah, I think Canadian news media outlets, I mean, we're already one of the countries with the least amount of news outlets. So it's so easy to program our news because there's so little competition in that market. Yeah. I mean, it's got to come from the outside sources, the online, the YouTubes, the podcasts, and that's starting to grow at an exponential rate.
Big time.
And people are gravitating to that because they see that it's pretty obvious when you watch CNN versus Tucker Carlson. Like,
yeah,
if you watch both for 10 hours, it's pretty easy to tell what the truth is and what's not. CNN,
you would think a lot of people,
everybody,
not for everybody yet.
But if you give it enough time, my point is people don't even watch Tucker Carlson. Like the people that are watching CNN are not watching.
Yeah, exactly, right.
So,
and it's not even just Tucker. There's just so many Patrick Bet-David. There's got a lot of guys.
Tons.
There's tons out there that really, nail it, and the truth is out there.
The truth is scary is the problem. That's kind of the one thing. Once you start going down the rabbit hole of all these different things that happen in the world, you realize how corrupt the governments are, how corrupt the financial system is, how corrupt the banks are, how corrupt, the whole system.
If you have censorship, you don't have democracy.
Correct.
That's 1,000%.
People should be able to say whatever they want and do whatever they want as long as they're not harming anybody else.
And that's how you have a free election where people can determine if you're distorting the truth like they did with Trump. The election was rigged in the United States last. Why? Because they censored all that information about Biden and his kid and the China stuff. When you start censoring stuff like that, you can't have a free and fair election.
No.
It's impossible to have democracy.
That's why I've never really...
You got to let people decide with everything. You can't censor that out to make a sound decision who your next president or prime minister.
Well, that's just it. I've never really been a firm believer in voting just because I know it's all rigged and I mean, whether it's the Republicans or the Democrats, or it's Trump or Biden or Trudeau or Pierre Poilievre?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter.
Right.
It really doesn't. These guys are all career politicians. They're there to, obviously Trump wasn't for his whole life, but obviously he's not going away. I don't think.
He came guns a-blazing, and now he's kind of sketchy on it.
He's not going to make, he will improve certain things of the economy of the U.S., but he's not going to save the dollar.
Right.
I mean, he's not going to save the middle class. The U.S. is going to go down, whether it's Trump or anybody else. The big issues with the United States and most countries of the world is the central bank that is attached to it. Right. That's what makes the citizens of that country slaves, because they have a central bank. If a country needs to borrow money, they shouldn't be borrowing from a private institution. They should be borrowing from themselves. Exactly. They should be printing the money themselves, not printing it, having a third-party family print the money and then pay them interest. Like, it makes no sense how it's designed.
And that's why people got to wake up to that. The system is broke.
That's what the issue is.
Exactly. And how do we solve that?
It's not the prime ministers or the president.
Who's going to help us?
It's got to be us.
It's us, exactly.
I mean, that's what it's going to come to.
I hate to say this because I don't want people to come out, but no, we got to get, the people got to get in the streets and say enough is enough.
Yeah.
Like, if everybody just went in the streets, protest, stop paying taxes,
you're starting to see some.
It's game over.
That's around the world.
Yeah.
In Europe.
Big time.
That's just going to continue.
Yeah.
This is a global crisis. This is a global currency crisis.
Yeah.
It's not a Canada, U.S. specific. This is inflation around the world is going crazy. I mean, the middle class around the world is becoming worse and worse and worse. I mean, so it's not like it's just for us.
It's happening all over the world. There's no doubt about it, but we're the biggest targets, because if you could...
The Western countries, for sure.
Yeah, if you could attack us, everybody else is easy, because America was...
And you take down
the American dream.
If
you get rid of the American dream.
But you also take down the world with it.
Yeah.
I mean, China loses their number one customer.
Yeah.
I mean...
well, I'm not saying that these guys just want full control, and that's all that matters to them.
Well, and that's why...
and you ain't having it right now in America, because people, they're still that strong believers of freedom of speech, the Constitution.
Mm-hmm.
So that's
why I do believe there will be a civil war in the U.S. I think you're going to see that. It might even start later this year. But, I mean, there is going to come a point where the people will have to rebel and fight back. And maybe it doesn't happen until the CBDCs get implemented, or there's a war, or who knows what's going to trigger it, or cyber attack. Something's going to, or the banks go down and you can't access your money. I mean, there's 100 different possibilities that could cause a civil war to start. I just feel like it's inevitable at this point.
Yeah.
To be honest with you, I think it's a good thing for the people. We have to push back against all of these things coming, specifically the central bank digital currency. We have to get central banks out of this completely. And it's very simple, by the way. All you have to do is not allow the central banks to print any more money. Yeah. Once you do that, they go bankrupt. They're literally bankrupt. So that has to happen. And it's a very easy thing to occur. Problem is, nobody has the balls to do it, because every person that's fought against the central bank has essentially died. I mean... You
pay with blood.
You do. Gaddafi, Saddam Hussein, JFK. You can't go against these central banks, because they are the most powerful.
But that's why, and you said it before in other podcasts episodes, we said politicians are not your savior. We are the only ones that are going to save us.
You won't. They will never let a politician in power that is actually for the people.
And you've seen them try with JFK. I mean, JFK dry.
Sure.
You've seen the results.
Well, that's just it.
Yeah, exactly. So,
yeah, it's going to be interesting. I mean, that's why war, I don't think, is going to go away.
The assassinated presidents were the best presidents.
For sure.
If you want to touch on CPIs back up in the United States.
Yeah, so the inflation numbers in the U.S. came out a few weeks ago, and inflation is rising again. So they raised rates a record amount of times in a row, I think over 10 times, 11 times, I think. And it's still not slowing down. I mean, it slowed it down for several months, but now it's starting to go back up.
Right. Okay.
So the risk there is, how do you lower interest? They talk about lowering interest rates 3 times. How do you lower interest rates if inflation is going higher? I mean, you're basically telling the world or your country that you don't care about inflation. You're going to just let it go higher and higher, which is just going to kill the middle class. So it's going to be a more expensive world to live in the future. globally. And that's a dollar issue. That's a currency issue. That's because of the central banks. They're the ones that cause it. They keep interest rates suppressed forever because they want the economy to do well. They want stocks to stay inflated. They want real estate to stay inflated. Problem is, the longer you inflate these asset prices, the more distorted they get and the bigger the crash comes. And that's where we're heading. The bubble's getting blown up bigger and bigger and bigger. Stock market's at all-time highs. Gold is near all-time highs. Cryptocurrencies all-time highs. So every asset class is going to be inflated. But the pin will pop those balloons, and you're going to see the real estate market collapse. You're going to see the bond market collapse. And it's all going to start with the bond market, by the way. And like you talked about in March 11th, the repo market, the funding for the banks ends. So, I mean, that's going to put a lot of pressure on the bond market because interest rates at that point will likely rise. So, I mean, I don't know. They're going to have to raise rates at some point, but it doesn't look like they're going to want to anytime soon. So we're probably going to see lower rates before we see higher rates, which is going to be really bad for us because all that's going to mean is the prices of everything are going to go higher and higher and higher. People think it's a good thing because now they feel like their home is affordable. They can afford that mortgage. Their interest rate will come down on the mortgage, but in reality, long term, it's a really bad thing for the middle class because things are just going to become more and more expensive and unaffordable.
So I want to end on a positive note and take a line from Patrick Bet-David. He's been preaching this, and it's almost like a hashtag for him. The future looks bright. So he's got a positive outlook. And I think what you talked about today, the future does look bright. If people diversify their portfolios, you have protection now. Protect your wealth with, you have gold, you have silver, and now you have Bitcoin. If you're not diversified in any of these commodities, get diversified now. Not saying put all your eggs in one basket, gold or silver or Bitcoin, but get a small percentage in it, or even 10% of your portfolio should be in commodities. You should have precious metals. You should have crypto. There's no doubt about it. You want to still stay in stocks because it made you a killing? That's fine. But at least, 10%, 5% of your portfolio, you got to have some backup.
Yeah, I mean, I think 10 to 25% should be in precious metals.
Yeah.
I mean, I look at gold and silver as insurance, specifically gold more so.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody has life insurance, car insurance, home insurance. Everybody's insured for everything except a financial collapse or a currency collapse.
Exactly.
I mean, that's the most important, in my opinion, it's more important than life insurance and house insurance and car insurance. I mean,
exactly.
I don't want to lose my whole family's net worth because I wasn't diversified and only held on stocks and bonds and real estate. You got to own commodities. It's never been a more important time to own precious metals. There just hasn't. And not to mention the other great thing about gold and silver is it's outside of the banking system and in your possession. Exactly. So even if the banking system were to implode, you don't care. You have assets outside of that banking system, which will explode in value when that does happen because everybody's going to want to rush into that asset and you're not going to be able to get it at that point. I mean, when the system starts to fail, and it won't happen overnight, but it will slowly fail, people will start rushing into precious metals to the point where nobody's going to be able to obtain anymore because it will all be gone.
You want to be too late. You want to get it now.
People always say that it's better to be 2 years too early than 1 day too late.
Exactly.
And people that know what we know still don't own gold and silver.
Yeah.
They know they should be.
Yeah.
But for some reason, because
it's not sexy.
It's not sexy. Nobody else is buying it.
Right.
Nobody's talking about it.
Right.
It hasn't gotten anybody rich over the last couple of years.
Right.
Like obviously Bitcoin gets people a little more excited because you can make 10 to 20 times, but gold and silver hasn't really performed to that level yet.
Yeah.
Like it did in the 70s. And that's where I think we're going to go into it over the next few years. You're going to see precious metals absolutely explode in price and real estate, stocks, bonds will not perform well in that environment.
Yeah. And there's ways you can go on canamcurrency.com and set up a consultation with Mike for free. And you give out free consultations with gold and silver.
Yep.
And also, too, if you're lazy and you don't want to, you're in the instant world, we got canambullion.ca or canambullion.com where you could buy precious metals online, have it delivered right to your doorstep.
Yeah.
So,
fully insured. So
Yeah.
and there's ways. And
there's ways. Right?
obviously your financial advisor is not going to tell you to go out and buy gold and silver.
Yeah.
They don't make money on that.
Exactly.
Your bank's not going to tell you to buy gold and silver. There's really not a lot of people out there that truly understand the reasons to own gold and silver, especially financial advisors and banks. So you really got to do your own research, or else you're never going to come up with the idea of even buying gold and silver unless you're a historian, right? You've studied history, you've studied the history of money, you've studied cycles. I mean, everything makes it very obvious that the precious metals and cryptocurrencies right now is the assets to be in stocks and bonds and real estate. To me, their best days are behind them.
Get diversified. Okay, guys, get diversified. Get into the commodities game before it's too late.
Awesome. Thanks, brother.
No problem.